So, just like you say, you're revolutionary, and the movement. Like, I definitely feel you because I remember particularly in like the late '80s, early '90s, that black strength thing that we can immediately think of like PE,
X-Clan.
X-Clan.
Yeah. I did all the X-Clan videos.
Right, and
See, that was me.
Vainglorious, baby, Vainglorious, yeah, and you know,
Public Enemy. I did 4 or 5 videos for that.
Yeah, so I mean, but I remember particularly like that era, everybody was just so peaceful and just had the message. It wasn't really anything wrong with it, but it wasn't portrayed in a negative way. You know, and somewhere along the lines, like when we come to today, that message is not well received amongst people. You know, people don't like anything positive. They want to hear all of the dumbed down, silly music, so to speak. I mean, not like the music doesn't sound good, but the message is definitely not positive, at least for us as a culture. You know, and what do you feel about that?
I mean, I think that the culture of hip hop it was watered down once we made a record. First time we made a record, it was watered down. Right. You know, when they stopped putting DJs in the video.
Right. I know that. Yeah.
You know, when we didn't see Wiz, we just saw Kenny play.
Right.
We knew Wiz was part of the group, but we didn't see him. When they didn't see Scratch with EPMD.
Right.
You know, Jam Master Jay, thank God he was born for it.
Right.
Right. You know, but once you started making, because the record companies didn't really care about the culture of hip hop, they just cared about selling the music and the money. Right. And so they just started stripping. We don't need the breakdancing. We don't need the graffiti. We don't need the DJ. We just need these 2 guys rapping, and that's all we need. And that's not hip hop. You know, so it's been stripped down from '85. You know, from early. You know, so here we are now in 2010, 2011. These kids don't even. I mean, they call it hip hop just to put a name on it, but it's really not hip hop. It's not hip hop. Is not what you hear on the radio right now.
No, it's not.
We need to, you know, have a label for it, you know, for the sake of iTunes and, you know, some type of internet label or something like that. So we call it hip hop. They call R&B hip hop.
Yeah.
So look at what they did to R&B. Tell that to Marvin Gaye. You know what I mean? So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, that's just the nature of business. You know, it's not just in music. It's in all kinds of business that happens. So, you know, people, you know, like when we were going to put this together today, you know, so why do you do this? I said, you know, didn't it make you feel, oh, I said, no, because we have to talk about it so people know what's going on, you know, because in the black community, we don't talk about stuff. Right. You know, we want to keep it in the house. Don't talk about it.
Right.
You know, we got to talk about it so that these young little kids right here know exactly what it was. You know, when somebody taping it, whatever, for the internet, knows exactly what it was. You know, we live in a society now that information can be clicked off real quick. So hopefully somebody's putting this up on the internet. Like what you hear on the radio right now is not hip hop. You know, that's just music for the radio. You know, and that could change tomorrow to the country music if they decided to make it. You know, whatever they want to make it, whatever they feel they can sell the most. But the culture of hip hop is still alive and well. You know. It's still going on. You know, you go to the Rocksteady events, and you go to Zulu Nation, actually celebrating this today. And you go to those events, and it's still going on. And that's what it's all about. You know, hip hop is about, you know, a revolution of changing the way we do things. It's about being ourselves. It's about doing you. It's about having fun. You know, it's about it's about a people that, you know. To me, hip hop was like a lost tribe in itself. You know, they couldn't. You know, b-boys. Nobody wanted to hang with b-boys. You know, b-boys were off on their own. You know, they were like hanging in the park. They couldn't get in the clubs. They couldn't dress. They didn't want to dress up. B-boys were just kind of like on their own. And then, you know, Herc took them in, and Africa Bambaataa took them in, and Flash started cutting and scratching, and they found themselves. You know, they couldn't go to the clubs downtown in Midtown. You know, in the 40s and 50s. So they stayed in the Bronx. You know, and that's what it was all about. And then cats like myself and you, we started journeying and getting hip to this music, and Vern and found ourselves, you know, like we are part of this, man. There's something in this music that we dig, because I grew up on disco, really.
Yeah,
you know, disco was what was happening before, you know, before hip hop, and so, and funk and soul, you know. So all of that combined rolled in. We took a little bit of all of that soul, and a little bit of all that disco, and a lot of James Brown, and made it hip hop.
The astonishing conquers any magic you conjuring. I can read your mind, I see every thought you pondering. I can hear your steps before you take them when you wandering. How you gon' hate them? Gotta honor and acknowledge them. Used to battle rappers, now I school them and admonish them. Some are trash, talking out their ass, few are promising. Check their papers, give them back, throw a couple comments in. Give them ease for effort, not using common sense. I try to be an optimist and compliment your confidence. We could have a conference, I bring you truth and consequence like Dre and Quest. Just boogie down to my philosophy like KRS. It's the beat of RAF, here it is. Dead the arguments, I'd rather reconnect the continents. Wicked wordplay, I smack the vowels out of consonants. After competition over them, I'm steady powering. Make you a believer, the evidence overpowering, astonishing.